As Iowa farmers are taking to their fields, debate over federal rules and regulations is growing in Iowa's Senate race.
Sunday's debate included discussion over EPA proposed changes to the Clean Water Act, which could cost farmers big money. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Berry is here to explain what those new regulations could look like. Kevin?
Yeah, Scott and Tiffany, farmers generally have a hit or miss relationship with the EPA, balancing their common goal of keeping the land healthy and butting heads on too much regulation trying to do that. The discussion started with climate change.
Therefore, you do accept that climate change does exist.
I do believe that our climate is changing, but again, I'm not sure what the impact of man is upon that climate change.
And quickly bounced to the Environmental Protection Agency.
Senator Ernst wants to abolish the EPA and the Clean Water Act, and I think that's a misguided decision.
The EPA and Army Corps of Engineers are looking to expand their regulatory power over some farms by expanding the definition of waterways it would regulate. It's meant as a clarification on where the agency has authority.
They're talking about potholes and drainage ditches and small creeks that are dry half the year.
John says that kind of regulation wouldn't just require a one-time cost to comply, but could hit farmers year after year.
My guess would be they're going to want larger setbacks areas, which would take more land out of production along these ditches and these small creeks.
Braley voted against the bill that would prevent the EPA from expanding its reach after his amendment that would have provided extra protection for farmers was defeated.
I voted against the EPA having the power to regulate ditches and farm ponds. What I didn't vote for was throwing everything out and going back to square one, because Iowa farmers have been waiting for guidance under the Clean Water Act, and that's exactly what that bill would have done.
Guidance or not, John says the EPA has started to reach just a little too far.
I think the best thing that could happen to the EPA is if it was dialed back and it was stuck to its basic mission.
John says at the end of the day, on farming, both Braley and Ernst are from Iowa. He thinks they'll generally look out for the interests of farmers. He says it's Braley's stance on other issues and his comments about Senator Chuck Grassley that causes him the biggest problem in rural areas. Kevin Barry, CBS 2 News.
Just this year, Cedar Rapids has seen shots fired 79 times, much more than in recent years. In Iowa's Senate race, a race that continues to gain national attention, gun control and ways to keep people safe is a hot topic. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Berry explains where both candidates stand on the issue in our Vote 2014 coverage. Kevin.
Tiffany, Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst pretty much split down party lines when it comes to gun control. Bruce Braley wants more regulations when it comes to legally carrying a weapon. Joni Ernst says she just wants to enforce the laws that are already on the books. But the one thing that both sides can really come together on is the fact that the state has to do better with mental health care.
I think we should have background checks so that criminals can't buy guns, and people who are battling severe mental illness aren't able to buy guns without a background check.
There is an underlying issue that goes along with much of this gun violence, and that is of mental health.
Ernst says the solution lies in mental health reforms that the Iowa legislature passed when she was a state senator and took effect July 1st.
I think we are headed in the right direction, making sure that everyone, regardless of their circumstance, regardless of where they live, they have access to that type of care.
The state is working to transition care from the county level to a regional model with the intention of making help available before someone who needs it causes harm. That's a fairly easy idea to get behind.
Mental health is a critical part of caring for a patient before they become a danger to themselves or others.
The catch is that care experts say there's been a push recently towards moving mental health care to smaller facilities and out of traditional centers. Kent Jackson says most physicians are in favor of it, within reason.
But if you don't take care of that small number of people adequately that are potentially dangerous, and you live in a society that has a proliferation of guns are very easy to get, then you have, what you see on the news.
That is the plan on how to improve mental health care within the state, coming up on the CBS 2 News at 6. We'll take a look with some of those healthcare professionals at how that plan has been working so far. Kevin Barry, CBS 2 News.
With just 2 weeks left until Election Day and early voting already started, both political parties are pulling out the big names for one final push.
It's brought former presidential candidates, current senators, and this afternoon, the First Lady to the state. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Barry explains the careful consideration that goes into which big name comes through.
At this point in the campaign, people have known who they're going to vote for weeks now. But for those last few undecided voters, it could be the right big name at the right time that pushes them towards one candidate or the other.
I know why you're here. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh, it's very exciting. Yeah, she's a very charismatic woman.
Between Ebola, the Affordable Care Act, and the Middle East, the latest polls have President Obama's approval rating hovering around 40%. He's been appearing with a few gubernatorial candidates across the country, but not all that many.
Because of his popularity being low, he has to be very careful about picking which places he's going to appear.
Instead, it's Mrs. Obama that most candidates want to see on their campaign trail.
I think the American public in general likes her no matter what.
You know, she seems more relatable for people to approach.
Which could pull votes for Braley he didn't have before.
My goodness. Oh, it's good to be back in Cedar Rapids.
On the Republican side, Mitt Romney has a different effect. Hagel says some moderate conservatives think Ernst is too extreme, but with Romney's support.
I can't tell you how pleased I am to be able to introduce the next great senator from the great state of Iowa, Joni Ernst.
It becomes a lot easier to lock up all parts of the base. The Republicans answer back tomorrow. Senator Rand Paul will be all over eastern Iowa for a handful of Republican candidates just 2 weeks until Election Day. Covering the corridor in Iowa City, Kevin Barry, CBS 2 News, 10 at 10.
Significant development in one of the most talked about races in the country. Lawyers are now getting involved.
Joni Ernst's campaign filed Freedom of Information requests with counties across the state asking for election and recount information. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Barry explains what that means at this point in the campaign. Kevin?
Yes, Scott and Tiffany, the Ernst campaign filed with the Johnson County Auditor on Monday asking for materials that have to do with this year's elections. In a race that's already shaping up to be very close, it's just one more wrinkle in the final 2 weeks.
I really actually wasn't that surprised. All the polling shows this race is very, very close.
We've been planning since day one that this could be a recount, so you know, we've already been thinking about that and, you know, going through what would happen if that does occur.
Weipert says it's not out of the ordinary to get requests for information, but they normally come from the parties, not individual campaigns. He says that so all the candidates can coordinate campaign and voting events together, and so they don't all request the same information when they can just share with each other.
It's just another request. It's just the size and timing.
Weipert says the auditor's office already has a crew of part-time employees helping full-timers handle early voting and absentee ballots, and now more of those full-time employees are spending time fulfilling the request.
It's just stuff that's time-consuming for us to pull right now with having the election occurring at the same time.
Republican voters Thursday morning didn't think much of it.
I think it actually shows you need to trust but verify and know exactly what the process is.
Ernst's campaign had been quiet on the issue until they sat down with a Des Moines news station.
I feel that we are going to have a very strong victory November 4th. So I see this as a way, from my point of view, it's a great way for us to notify folks where they need to go to vote to make sure we have that strong victory.
One of the hottest races in the country is prompting an all-out blitz. Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with Vote 2014. With just 9 days until the election, both parties have jam-packed schedules. But for the next 24 hours, Democrats are running round the clock to push Iowans to the polls. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Barry is in Iowa City tonight, where the first 12 hours are just wrapping up. Kevin?
Matt, this time of year when some voters are, like you said, ready to tear up their ballot, sick of the political process that's flooding the airwaves with those political ads, others are just trying to get in those last conversations with the candidates who just might get their vote. No matter what your political persuasion, though, starting at noon today and running until noon tomorrow, Iowans basically won't be able to get away from the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter what the conversation is about. It can range from Medicare to the fact that one voter found out that the president's family dogs have not one, not two, but 3 security guards.
I thought, hey, I'm a taxpayer. I'm not saying I like that.
Well, you enjoy your day now. No matter what they talk about, the idea for Democrats is just to talk a lot in many different places.
We have elected officials, basically, or people on the ballot, or Senator Harkin hitting all 99 counties here both today and before noon tomorrow.
It's not a unique idea. The Republican Senate candidate Joni Ernst has been doing the same.
I am engaged on the 99 county tour, and I'm going out into open forums and visiting with Iowans and hearing what their concerns are.
But Democrats are upping the ante. Just today, 1st District House candidate Pat Murphy started in Tama County before having a late lunch with Benton County voters in Vinton, before heading to Waterloo to thank some Black Hawk County volunteers, which Murphy says could be the difference in his extremely close race with Republican Rod Blum.
As you can tell on the television commercials, we don't have as many commercials running for us, so a lot of the work we do is done on foot.
Senate candidate Bruce Braley followed suit, hitting Iowa County and Conroy, and a few stops later, he was in Tipton, where he spoke with Cedar County volunteers.
Stop number 5 on 99 and 24. We're rocking it all over the state.
One of the things that we have to do as we head into the last 9 days of the campaign is to get people energized and enthusiastic about what's at stake in this election.
It's all part of the final battle for Democratic candidates fighting against the reputation of an unpopular president, while the party looks to hold 2 seats against what recent polls are suggesting are increasingly popular Republicans. The Blitz ends tomorrow morning with a Davenport rally headlined by Vice President Joe Biden. He's the first of a laundry list of big names that are expected to come through the Hawkeye State this coming week. Covering the corridor in Iowa City, Kevin Barry, CBS 2 News, 10 at 10.
In Washington, if you want a friend, get a dog.
For representatives trying to get legislation through Congress, a dog might be their only option.
And we've passed over 400 bills, almost all of them on a bipartisan basis, that are sitting on Harry Reid's desk, waiting for the Senate to act.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says he and Reid co-sponsored a bill together, and even that can't see a vote.
It's the Democrats in the Senate refuse to pass anything, and when they bring up something, they refuse to even talk to us about compromise in the middle.
But Senator Tom Harkin says just look at who's been doing all the filibustering.
It's been Republicans in the Senate who filibuster bill after bill after bill and don't allow us to even bring them up for a debate.
Regardless, recent polls give a slight lead to Ernst, who could fill one of the 6 seats Republicans need to control the Senate, giving the GOP the entire legislative branch. Is it payback for ramming the Affordable Care Act through?
Well, I think that thoughtfully they will go in, put pieces of legislation on the president's desk that makes sense.
Governor Perry says that means fixing health care and walking back federal agencies like the EPA that he says have overstepped their boundaries. It would also mean for the first time in decades that a state both major parties can agree is fairly purple has senators from the same party. Harkin says he and Chuck Grassley don't always agree.
But when it comes to Iowa, we work together. And so he works his side, I work my side.
And he says because of that, Iowans have benefited.
One week until Election Day, one of the closest Senate races across the country has a new leader, although very slightly. Loras College's final poll for the 2014 midterm elections shows Democrat Bruce Braley has taken a slight lead over Republican Joni Ernst, but it's well within the poll's margin of error, just 1 percentage point. Today, Ernst continued her appearances in the state with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. CBS 2 News reporter Kevin Barry explains how Rubio is a different kind of Republican and why that helps Joni Ernst.
When Republicans like Rick Santorum, Rand Paul, and Rick Perry come through Iowa for Joni Ernst, people know their views on many issues are very similar. But when someone like Marco Rubio comes through, who's the author of immigration legislation that Joni Ernst has said she's against, it means a little something more.
Republicans are a big tent. We don't do a good job of getting that big tent message across. Rubio brings a lot to the tent, and I'm pleased to see him.
That's the same Marco Rubio who helped write the comprehensive immigration reform legislation that Democrat Bruce Braley defended against Joni Ernst in Iowa's Senate debates.
I support the bill that the Senate passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. 68 senators voted for it. That would strengthen our borders, add 20,000 new Border Patrol agents to the border to protect us and make us safer.
I don't believe in amnesty, and that's really what this bill that the congressman supported would do.
But on the campaign trail, it's reassuring for someone like Althea Cole for politicians to put policy differences aside in the name of the party.
It makes me feel a little bit better when something actually does come on the floor of the House and the Senate, that people will be able to work together.
We can all differ on various aspects of policy, but we understand at the end of the day what matters is that we are coming together in consensus with solid policy that we can move forward to better not only Iowa or Florida, but the United States.
Rubio says the most important thing is that they can come together on the need for a Republican majority in the Senate so they can help people fulfill the American dream.
And I think that's true across ethnic lines, racial lines, religious lines, and even political lines. That's what we stand for. And we have to show people that we have an agenda that will help them achieve that. And if we do, I think we'll gain support from all kinds of Americans.
Tomorrow we are expecting new numbers from a Quinnipiac University poll, but the people who we talked to today who met Ernst and Rubio say they don't care about a percentage point one way or the other. They already knew this was going to be a tight race until the end. In Williamsburg, Kevin Barry, CBS 2 News, 10 at 10.
Only 6 days remain now until Iowans head to the polls, and there's no shortage of political firepower coming through the corridor.
Today, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was in Cedar Rapids stumping for Bruce Braley. Clinton made the rounds as the most recent poll numbers from Quinnipiac University show Republican Joni Ernst has a 4-point lead over Braley. Clinton and Braley also made a surprise visit at the Hamburg Inn in Iowa City before heading to Davenport. Fox 28 News reporter Kevin Barry has more tonight on how the gender factor could play an important role in the race.
Historically, there's a lot that goes into why certain groups of voters support certain candidates. But for anyone who thought that a female candidate for the U.S. Senate would automatically galvanize the female vote in her favor appears to be mistaken. Wisconsin Democrat Tammy Baldwin knows something about breaking glass ceilings. She's the first female U.S. Senator from her state, and before that, she was the first female Wisconsinite in the House of Representatives.
The gender gap, as it's been studied in the United States for years and years, is about women voting for candidates that are addressing the issues of greatest concern to women.
Which is where Ernst has struggled. In the State House, she backed a failed personhood amendment to the Iowa Constitution. That same type of amendment has been proposed in other states and could have historical effects if actually passed.
This has been an effort that's been used around the country with the intention of eliminating access to safe and legal abortion for women.
It's not enough to be a woman. You have to be committed to expand rights and opportunities for all women.
But Rhonda Agan sings a different tune.
Yes, she is against abortion, but so am I. I've had 2 abortions, so I know the effects of it later in life.
She's one of the 39% of women that Quinnipiac polls say are behind Ernst and her support of the Hobby Lobby Supreme Court decision allowing for-profit companies the right to refuse coverage of birth control based on religious beliefs.
She's just wanting our freedom of religion as well.
Ernst has said she does support making contraception available to women over the counter instead. If Joni Ernst does go on to make history and become the first female senator from the state of Iowa, the numbers look like she'll likely do it without the female vote. Covering the corridor in Cedar Rapids, Kevin Barry, Fox 28 News.
Coming down to the last 5 days before the midterm elections, and you've already heard plenty about the state's Senate race.
But there are a handful of other races, some of which are even closer than the battle between Joni Ernst and Bruce Braley. Fox 28 News reporter Kevin Barry continues our Vote 2014 coverage tonight. Kevin?
Scott and Tiffany here at the Hamburg Inn. There's the famous coffee bean caucus, and except for one bean, one vote, there really aren't any rules. But you're also not going to find any jars for some of the smaller races around the state. But candidates like Brad Anderson and Paul Pate want to become the Secretary of State here in Iowa so they can make sure that at real polling places, people don't vote this many times. Republican Paul Pate says he wants to protect Iowa's elections with explicit identification requirements. He also says 93% of voters already have a valid driver's license.
I think we've got smart enough people and we have enough resources that we can figure out a way to provide that last 7% with free photo IDs and put it into our system. We can do it.
Pate is a former Cedar Rapids mayor and already served as Secretary of State in the late 1990s. The last Loras College poll says it's virtually a dead heat between Pate and Democrat Brad Anderson, who has a slight edge in the numbers. Anderson says the laws on the books now allowing any poll worker to ask for ID from voters at any time already work.
We have some of the cleanest, fairest elections in the entire nation and really in the entire world.
He says he would want to expand access to voting information online. The District 2 House race hasn't gotten much attention because Democrat Dave Loebsack is sitting on a huge lead over Marionette Miller Meeks, a Republican running for office in a historically Democratic district.
And I think all of us in this room know that hope does not come from the government.
I don't take anything for granted. I'm not sleeping, I'm working, and I'm going to continue to work.
And finally, District 1, which has grabbed some headlines lately as Republican Rod Blum has closed the gap in the polls and recently took a slight lead.
People sense that we're heading in the wrong direction. They sense that something's wrong. So this vote on Tuesday is really about the direction of the country.
Democrat Pat Murphy says he and the rest of his party are talking about the right issues like tax reform, health care, and Social Security.
It's about making sure that those programs that people know have been an earned benefit their whole life will be there when they retire.
Like we said, those are three races that you won't find here at the Hamburg Inn, but to get all the information you want to know, be sure you go to our website and go to the Know Your Candidates tab. That's where we have all our campaign coverage. Covering the corridor in Iowa City, Kevin Barry, Fox 28 News.
It goes without saying, next week we will have complete election coverage here on Fox 28 News. On Monday,
48 hours from now, we should know the winners or be in for a very long election night. Either way, the candidates are making their final pitches. In the race for Iowa's 1st District House seat, Democrat Pat Murphy and Republican Rod Blum are touting their experience. Fox 28 News reporter Kevin Barry has the latest in this very close race.
It's nothing new for politicians to highlight the differences between them and their opponents. Democratic gubernatorial candidate Jack Hatch shaved off his mustache so he wouldn't look as much like Republican incumbent Terry Branstad. But in the battle for Iowa's 1st District House seat, one of the main differences is coming down to what each candidate did before the race.
People want change. They're tired of career politicians in Washington, D.C.
It's the textbook appeal from someone running for office who's running as an outsider, having never held public office before.
I think we don't have enough people like Rod who understand how the economy actually works.
I've signed paychecks my entire life. I've created jobs.
Democrat Pat Murphy is unapologetically inside that political class, serving in the State House for roughly 25 years, spending time as a minority leader and Speaker of the House.
So I think I have a lot of strength that I think I could offer going to Washington, D.C., where, quite frankly, he has none.
Murphy says Blum has potentially dangerous stances on issues that he calls social safety nets for both senior citizens and the middle class.
He wants to privatize Social Security. He wants to put it on Wall Street. He wants to raise the retirement age.
Those changes are part of the shakeup that Blum, a former businessman, says will draw out the independent and no-party voters, which outnumber both Republicans and Democrats in the 1st District.
We think they're going to overwhelmingly come our way on Election Day because they're tired of what's going on in this country and they want to see it change.
Change from an Obama administration that Murphy says isn't doing so bad.
We've had 6 years of economic growth. The economy is improving constantly.
The most recent polls have Rod Blum ahead by just a little bit, but well within the margin of error. But Pat Murphy says between absentee ballots and Democratic ground game, he feels pretty good about Tuesday. In Waterloo, Kevin Barry, Fox 28 News.